Hello people, does this sound stupid? I'm sure it does. Well anyways, so today we're going to be showing you how to make the thing like this. It's pretty neat. This is kind of what the end result looks like, except for it doesn't have to be pixelated. That was just a little effect I added. So, first thing you're going to do is going to, make a new thing. And I personally like making it 16 by 9, so I'll make it 1600 by 900. And that's just because it has a nice aspect ratio. So you can make the background black, and then you're going to make a new layer right here. You're going to switch your color to white, and you can change it to be a different kind of color of blue. So it's going to be not quite like a deep blue like this, it's going to be a light blue like that. Pretty light blue, pretty desaturated. The font I'm using for this is Escopo. I think I'm pronouncing it right. And that was a free one, and I should have a link to that in the description. Then we can we're gonna get a nice good size, and okay, so you see how here we have like the smaller text and the larger text, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of stuff to get that to work, but basically it's just gonna be typing make sure it's bold. Basically, it's just going to be typing and then we're going to be making the font size larger, and then we're going to be typing thing. It's not very difficult, but there, boom. Now it's done. So we've got this. Now, here's where a lot of the other stuff comes in. I'm going to go to Effects, Distort, I'm going to go to Morphology, and feel free to pause this at any point. Now we're going to essentially kind of dilate it a bit, right? So here's the mode, erode, dilate. So erode makes it get smaller, and then dilate makes it get larger, right? So it kind of like brings it out like that. So we're going to dilate it until there isn't any type of black stuff in the center, like the G, for instance. We're going to bring it until there's nothing there. And you don't really have to do that if you like the thickness of it. That's just something I like to do. Then, you see how we have a separate layer for the text? So on that layer, we go to Layers, we go to Rotate/Zoom, and what this little thing here will do, will rotate it, and these other things that we can use, it'll change the way in which we rotate it. I don't know how exactly they work, but I know that if I set this middle one to -90, and I move this one around, it'll rotate it in the way that we want. We're going to want to rotate it to about 20, for it to be, like it was in the title. And this is, you don't need to do this. And we can zoom it to about 1.2. That's a pretty good amount. You could even zoom a little bit more if you want. It could be like 1.3-ish. There we go. I hit OK. So now we have this. And I think it looks pretty good. So now that that's done for the most part, here's a little extra thing. So you notice how in here, it's a little kind of like shaky around the edges and stuff. Well, something that we can do for that is I can go to Distort, Crystallize, and now here there's one issue you might notice. Some of them aren't exactly the most, how should I put it, like opaque, right? Some of them are transparent. Now the issue that we have with that is that you see around the edges some of them aren't transparent. So an easy thing that I can do is I can just click on the black part, and I can drag up this tolerance, and that'll select all the semi-transparent things. I can hit delete, that'll make it pretty much all completely opaque. Then I can go do the distort, crystallize, and that's quite a lot, right? So kind of do this if you want to. It's not needed. I'll do that. Now, yeah, like I said before, that actually works. Never mind, you don't need to do that. Okay, great. So now, what you're going to want to do is duplicate this layer. And you go to Effect, actually go to Adjustments, Hue Saturation. You're going to change the hue until it's more like a deep blue, right? And then we're going to up the saturation a bunch. Great, now it looks like this. And what you can do is you can duplicate the layer, because we're going to be needing to do this again. Alright, so we go to Effects, Distort, Morphology. Now dilate, we're going to not use linked. What that'll do is if I change the height, it'll make the width the same, but we don't want that because we want to change just the height. We want to make it get tall like that. So we're going to want to do that about 3 times. You know, it doesn't need to be that much. It just kind of needs to look like this. Like if you're using a different aspect ratio or your image is smaller, you know, you can do it differently if you want. Anyways, so then we take this and we move it up and we match the bottom with this, just like that. Now, if I zoom out, you see, oh, that looks interesting. I think you can kind of see where this is going. So I go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. I make the radius get larger, and I hope I was pronouncing that right. Then, here's the great part. We go to Blur, Zoom Blur, and I can change the zoom amount to be something kind of like that. And you see, okay, that's looking pretty good. Now this right here will change the center of it, and it'll change the angle at which it's doing the blur. So if I do it at something like that, that looks pretty good in my opinion. I can just, you know, blur it a bit more, maybe. That might be a good idea, kind of do something like that. Boom. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm going to want to do the same thing, but on this other layer. Right, let me hide that thing we just did, see, because we duplicated it before we did all that. I'm going to do it again, but instead, this time, we're just going to do a small, not quite that large, sorry. I'm going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to make the radius smaller than it was last time. Then, we're going to go do that Zoom Blur again, and you see now, it's a lot more detailed. So let's show what we had before. Now I can go back to this layer that we just made, and I can set the blend mode to additive, and it'll do this. It'll make that kind of neat effect where you see how there's like the little highlights in it, right? Like right here, right here, right here. It'll do that. So we do that, and we can change the opacity down here to like show how much of the highlights there are. Right, so that'll change that. Then, one of the last things that we're going to want to do is I can duplicate the actual text, right, bring it to the front, but you notice how on here there's a big halo around the bottom, but on here there's like no halo around the bottom? Well, what we can do to fix that is I can just go to Distort, Morphology, make them linked again, bring it out to something like that. Hell, it could even be that large. Now, I would want to do something like blur it a pretty decent amount to kind of something like that. And then I can go to hue saturation, and it'll save what we had before. And now it looks like that. Great. Boom, bada bang. I can even blur it a bit more if I feel so inclined. It'll look like that. And keep in mind, you can tweak these values to however you want. I'm going to keep doing that, so now it looks, so now the highlights are a bit better like that. And then to make this text just really pop, you can go to the blend mode, switch it to additive, and you can change the opacity around a bit, but now you see how the text looks, like the text isn't just a uniform color, it kind of like matches it. So there, you can play around with it a bit more, but that's essentially what we're going to do. Now we can just merge them with the background and keep the text separate. I keep this top text separate because what we might want to do is we might want to kind of change some of the hue saturation of this if you feel like it, you know, to kind of try and make it match a little bit better. So something like this might be pretty good. And then I can make this one, maybe I can even make that be a bit more like that. Boom. Let's merge them, and now you have the thing. Now it's not perfect, but I think it works pretty well. And like I said before, yeah, you can keep changing these things to make it be like kind of looking how you want it to look. So I'm going to do that a little bit. So something kind of like this, something like like that. Something kind of like that, maybe. Then I don't even want to bring down the contrast, then bring down the brightness a bit. Something kind of like that. One of the issues I have right now is that the text is a little blue shifted, right? It's a little too blue. Now, you might not think that's an issue. I don't know. Doesn't really matter too much, though. So we got that. And you can save it like that. If you want to see how I made it look all pixelated, you can see it right now. So into Image, Resize, make it be nearest neighbor. And I set the width to 160, the height to 90. Right, so I'm kind of just, making it a lot smaller. Make that be resized. Don't make it be canvas. Change to like canvas width and height, right? Make it be image resize instead of canvas size, resize. So it looks like that. And I have a little plugin that lets me do this quantize thing. I think this is a plugin. And essentially I just switched it to median cut, turned the dithering level down most of the way. Just looks like that. Can make it be octree as well, but I don't know. I prefer the median cut for this type of look. Boom. Boom. Right. So that's how you get the thing title effect. Woo.